Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. Happy Wednesday, this impromptu solo episode that I'm going to do here with a little joint practice update from today. Our beloved Washington Commanders made their way up to Massachusetts to face off against the New England Patriots, and what we thought was going to be a joint practice was eerily similar to a cage fight or a MMA match where Mike Vrabel ended up leaving bloodied on his cheek. And we will get into that in Marshawn Lattimore's comments regarding it all. Before we get into what team reporters that were at practice today have to say, joint practices altogether is a really good way to be able to look at the team with going against different competition. You can get used to the guys that you're playing with every single day. Obviously being on your own team, going against somebody else that has different techniques, different kind of ways that they go about their business. It's easy. It's better for you to kind of gauge where you are, right? That are not able to be with you every day. That being said, I did real quick wanted to say Jordan McGee, I believe, did not travel. Neither did Brandon Coleman. Marcus Mariota did not practice today either. I know that there was a list of others as well that did not practice today, which is unfortunate because that's something that, especially with Jordan McGee, that's somebody I wanted to see a lot from in this preseason game on Friday. Now, that is up in the air. Brandon Coleman obviously still being out, that's a big deal. That's somebody who was dinged up last year. He's a tough SOB. He played through injury last year. His last year in college, he was playing through injuries and actually did really well given the circumstances. So I think that's if week one was right now, I think Brandon Coleman would be good to go. Glad to hear that Debo is actually practicing right now, even with that finger injury that he had early on where he just jammed it. Wasn't that big of a deal. But I'm just saying that is a concern for myself. I said that in the last episode, and I look kind of ridiculous. He was practicing the next day. But let's get into actual practice from today, and let's get into some reporters from the team had to say. And this first one is from John Keim. He says, Trey Amos continued his strong summer with a solid showing. No one wins every play, but he did a nice job on a couple routes versus Stephon Diggs. On one, he was patient, jammed, disrupt, and overthrow on a fade to the end zone. He messed up the timing. That's music to our ears. We've heard Dan Quinn kind of talk about Trey Amos and his ability to not, or I think it was Joe Witt, who said he just doesn't have bad days, right? And that kind of echoes of what John Keim is saying here. With Trey Amos, that's exactly what you want to hear. Now, the next one from John Keim is on Marshawn Lattimore on the two skirmishes from today. Quote from Marshawn, "We are fighters. I love that. Mentally and physically fighting. I love to see that from a young team, too. Just ready to do whatever. That's football. It's a physical sport. If that's too physical for you, you shouldn't be playing." Which some guys on Twitter came up with the nickname Southeast Sean from Marshawn. And look, that's the type of guy that I want. That's the dog-ass competitor that Dan Quinn has talked about before. And Joe Witt talked about in his presser on Marshawn Lattimore's ability to, even last year when he wasn't fully healthy, wasn't practicing every day, still made a point to go out there and play on Sundays. And he just talked about how great that was of Marshawn. And I think this just kind of speaks to what Marshawn brings to you from a secondary standpoint. And if fans of this team in particular, who I think a lot of us, like the jersey behind me, that Sean Taylor mentality, like that's what Marshawn is kind of epitomizing right now. It's just that mentality, that attitude on the football field. I've played with a lot of guys like it, and it could be a huge plus for you in a lot of situations. And I'm glad today that Marshawn has kind of put it on for the young guys. And he gave a little nod of credit to the Patriots. Them being, because obviously we know at this point, no one regards Washington as a young team, right? We're kind of looked at as the old team with how many guys that we have on our squad, except for Terry McLaurin, of course. But it kind of speaks to overall the nod to the Patriots to say they're taking Vrabel's kind of mentality, his personality, and the sense of being scrappy and not being afraid of being physical or contact. And like, look, man, between fighters, like a lot, I've seen people say before, like how MMA fighters can right after they fight, they'll dap up and they'll hug each other, say good job. It's like when real recognizes real, right? If you're putting up a physical matchup and you're trying to beat somebody up and they're making it hard for you to do, you gain respect in that regard. And that's what Marshawn Lattimore is here showing. Now let's go to our next one that we have here. And this one's going to be of Zach Selby, good friend of this show. He said that Josh Johnson ends practice with a touchdown pass in the back of the end zone to Jacoby Jones. Great to hear from Josh Johnson. Look, I told you guys last episode, I love me some JJ, man. That's my guy right there. Now, this was a really big sticking point for Selby that he says, nice showing by the defense during the 2-minute situation drills. Defense kept Drake May and his out of the end zone and came up with a pick from Mikey Sainristil, which this is huge because a lot of people, especially the Patriots beat reporters, were kind of putting out there that Drake May and the Patriots offense were kind of able to do whatever they wanted, really. But this kind of goes back to what Washington kind of was last year and what Washington is overall, especially defensively, where it's that bend but don't break mentality. And this is them showcasing once again that, yeah, you might be able to get down the field on us, but to be able to get in the end zone is going to be very difficult for you. And obviously there's Patriots reporters out there putting it out there that obviously they were able to score some touchdowns, and that's going to happen in a joint practice. But overall, you love to see that when their back is up against the wall, they're able to come through. I know there's been some speculation today on how good of a day Mikey Sainristil still had operating out of the slot, but obviously he ended it on a good note. And it's not how you start, right? It's how you finish. And one thing I will say, a lot of people will point out that maybe this wasn't the greatest practice. I know that early on Twitter, there was a lot being said about how practice was going on Twitter, and I was like, okay, well, practice is going great. We're doing really well. But then I get in our Discord, and Chris Coverton shows that it wasn't going all that great. We were having some difficulty on offense, very vanilla type stuff, a lot to dinks to Zach Ertz and company. But that being said, this is not a time to, that's not a cause for concern whatsoever. If we could go back a year ago, going against the Miami Dolphins, and obviously that was Jaden's rookie year. Everyone not being on the same page, a bunch of turnover from the team overall, coming together in a short amount of time. But that being said, it's eerily similar to that. Whereas was that joint practice really an indicator for how the season was going to go for Washington? No. And I think Cliff and like others are just doing vanilla stuff to get everyone acclimated into practice today. I'm not even sure if they were able to tackle today. But that being said, Jaden Daniels and company, I know Ben Volin tweeted this from the Patriots. He said that Jaden Daniels was operating like a surgeon and was being able, he doesn't miss a read, which is what we have heard about Jaden all off season long. And the kid deserves a lot of credit for not ever stopping of work. He is constantly working hard. And it's evident in his play. And look, you could give a lot of credit to the Patriots defense on forcing Washington to do things with the football when passing, in particular dinking it off to Zach Ertz. But that's what you want from the quarterback position. Tom Brady and others were so masterful at this, at taking what the defense is giving you. There's obviously times that you want to force the issue. You want to be able to feed the ball downfield. And you want to force the defense, try to feed that deep ball in there. But a lot of the times, you want to just take what the defense is giving you to get positive yardage. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is moving the chains. And that's essentially what Jaden Daniels was doing today, going against a new defense he hasn't faced, obviously. And Mike Vrabel's defenses, they spent a lot of money on that unit this offseason. And so, obviously, Mike Vrabel is a great defensive mind. His mentality is infectious. And their defense is really taking on that personality. And we saw today that Jaden didn't feel the need to force anything. As much as we would like to say this is probably the best time to do so, still wasn't putting the ball in harm's way whatsoever. Now let's go to our next one that we have here. This one is from Zach Selby on Twitter. Zach Selby writes, nice throw and catch from Daniels to Ja'Cory Brooks, the undrafted free agent, in 7-on-7 drills. Brooks had the one-handed grab in the end zone. Ja'Cory Brooks is somebody that Logan and I talked about last week, and he kind of talked about how Ja'Cory Brooks, Michael Strachan, and Chris Moore have come up with some really big catches, but the consistency is where it is. That being said, Ja'Cory Brooks showing out in joint practices, working with Jaden Daniels. Look, it is 7-on-7s. There's no defensive lineman. It's more of a coverage and wide receiver kind of breakdown. You don't have your rushers in front of your face. You don't have your linemen on you, of course. But that being, he was able to get a one-handed grab, just showing the ability of Ja'Cory Brooks. A name to keep an eye out on. I would circle to say that that's somebody you should watch out for on Friday, just to see how he looks. Let's see that consistency. I've played with guys that weren't great in practice, but were phenomenal in games. Some guys are like that. Maybe Ja'Cory Brooks is. I don't have his rap sheet from Louisville when he was on the practice when he was at practice there. But on game days he did show up with some big time plays, and so Friday night is going to be a big indicator from him. One thing that Selby brought up to me in the DM was Laramie Tunsil. I saw it from JP. I saw it from others that Laramie Tunsil had blocked a linebacker into the sideline, into the stands, really. And then that invoked a fight, of course, because nobody likes getting their ass kicked like that. You don't like getting manhandled by a grown man. That wasn't a corner. That wasn't a DB. That was a linebacker. Somebody who is literally asked to take on linemen. And it just goes to show you how good Laramie Tunsil is. Because everything that was been talked about with Laramie Tunsil is his footwork, his quickness to get around the edge and pull and sweeps and toss plays, but also his pass protecting ability. He did a great job locking up the left side today, not allowing Jaden Daniels to be touched, which is what Laramie Tunsil is supposed to be doing. But the fact that he's driving a linebacker off the field, drives him all the way to Canada, it kind of tells you that Laramie Tunsil, that cherry on top of the run game. And that's the kind of mentality this offensive line needs to bring this season. If we're being honest, there were some shortcomings with the wide receiving core. Everyone knows I'm a huge Terry McLaurin guy. And I've been saying for weeks that as much as everyone will tell me that the team has all the leverage over Terry, I don't necessarily believe that. And Nikki Giabala tweets today that based on the depth at wide receiver, Washington is in a dire kind of situation without Terry McLaurin, and maybe adding a little bit more leverage to Terry. I said, well, no crap. I've been saying this for weeks. As much as everyone would like to say that the team has all the leverage on Terry, we have to take into consideration here that the team itself is then mortgaging the success of this season in order to not pay more money in 2 to 3 years. Dan Quinn and company are not interested about in 2 or 3 years. I'm sure they are in a small sense, but compared to this year, that's the most important thing, is building on what Jaden Daniels did last season. And if you're going to tell me that they're going to be quite okay with Terry McLaurin sitting on the sideline with a tougher schedule, mind you, this upcoming season, I call bullcrap on that. I think this coaching staff very much is wanting Terry McLaurin to be practicing, but they don't have a say in it. It's up to the GM and the front office. Look, let Adam Peters cook. I trust him and everything like that. I'm just saying from my point of view, Terry does have leverage in the situation. And as much everyone likes to say he doesn't have anything, he's not going to take away game checks, the team doesn't want to do that. They need him. And if they need him, then Terry has leverage. That's just critical thinking at that point, because the team needs him to do well. The team itself needs to do well. And if you're going to tell me that they're okay with not having Terry during this tougher schedule, because in my personal opinion, with a harder schedule, with the NFC East getting back to what the roots were, which was an absolute just battle with every single team in that division, we're getting back to that. And there is a thin margin of error for Washington this season. So you can't tell me that they're going to be okay with him sitting out for a couple games. No, that could be the difference to the playoffs. Ask Joe Burrow and the Bengals and how they started last season, and they missed out in the playoffs, and how horrible that felt for them. You don't want that for Washington after making the NFC Championship game. You want to build on that. You want to get better. You want the best team possible on the football field. And you're not going to sit here and tell me that with Terry McLaurin not being on the field is Washington at its best. I call bullcrap on that, and I'm sure the coaching staff would as well. Now let's get into the next tweet that we have from Zach Selby. Two things that stood out to him today. Watching the offense was the connection between Daniels and Ertz. It's a cheat code, which we kind of already talked about a little bit. Just knowing where to go with the football based on what the defense is providing for you. Zach Ertz is Jaden Daniels blankie, right? This is as much as Adam Rank liked to talk about Jaden Daniels last season with his hurt rib, making fun of him, saying he's on the sideline with his binky. Well, Zach Ertz wasn't over there. That's his binky. And Zach Selby is absolutely right in saying they are a cheat code because they are very much on the same page. Just ask the Atlanta Falcons about that in overtime. And then obviously the second point there is Tunsil is really, really, really good, which is music to all of our ears. That was a big-time acquisition, and hats off to this organization for pulling that off without anybody knowing that it was possibly happening. It just being able to, and because just going back to Terry McLaurin a little bit, it's all about building around your quarterback. We can say to the cows come home that Jaden Daniels can operate with any wide receiver. He did really well with Alamati Zaccheaus. He made Diami Brown he helped Diami Brown make some money. You're absolutely right, but they aren't on the team anymore. We got to start up with new. And do you think that not having your number one wide receiver while you're in that cohesion stage of training camp on gelling, getting on the same page, you think that Terry McLaurin not being there with the other wide receivers? Because you have to imagine in training camp, Jaden Daniels is getting used to what is being presented out there from the offensive wide receivers. You can say you could just plug Terry McLaurin in and they're going to start up right away. I say no, I have a lawnmower right here. And during the wintertime, if I let it sit for a little while, maybe a month or two, if I need to mow my grass in a quick manner, if I need to win games immediately, I go up to start it up. What happens? It doesn't start up right away. It needs to warm up. You got to put the choke on. Unfortunately, there is no choke for a football team. It's hard to do that. You don't want to let it You don't want to allow it to become stagnant. You want to continue oiling the machine. You want it to continuously running every single week so that way when you need it, you hit the ground running and there's nothing obstructing you. That's the whole point here with Terry, is the microcosm of it all is every day that passes and Terry McLaurin is not on the field, you are possibly gambling with winning a football game in the first couple months, and that could be the difference between you making the playoffs and not. And as much as you want to play ego grab ass on how much money a guy makes and what's going to be suitable in 2 to 3 years, that's fine. But you'll have a lot of time to think about that when we're on the couch watching the playoffs. I'll tell you that. Now let's go to the next tweet from Selby from practice today. Oh, I like this one. Because everyone has a lot to say, especially Hall. Hall has a lot to say about this guy. Zach Selby writes, B-Rob is fired up today. He had a couple of really nice runs and has been trying to get his teammates hyped up in the huddle. And that's what you love to see from B-Rob. Because just like Terry early on in his career, I'm sorry I keep talking about Terry, but I love the guy. All I'm saying is, like Terry early on in his career, we wanted Terry to kind of take that leadership role, be more vocal, right? Well, with B-Rob being the leader in the group, you could say, along with Austin Eckler and others, but B-Rob being your RB1, your guy that you want the early down back, you want him to have that personality to hype up guys. It should not take B-Rob to have a couple of nice runs to get everyone hyped up, in my personal opinion. I'm glad to see this from B-Rob. You're in opposing team's facility. You're in their home turf, and you're ripping off a couple nice runs. Hopefully one of those runs is when Laramie Tunsil tossed the guy into the stands like Andre the Giant. But that is what you want to see from Brian Robinson. Be more of that leadership role, and let's see what you could do for the rest of this football team, because if you could kind of be that vocal leader, it's going to do a lot for that running game, especially for that offensive line. Then Zach Selby also writes, Michael Gallup just made a catch from Josh Johnson and lowered his shoulder on a Patriots DB. Michael Gallup coming out of retirement, man. That's what I'm talking about. He is absolutely humming at the moment. And now this last one from Zach Selby. We'll go to it real quick. First 11-on-11 period for the offense. JD5 was 3 of 3 with 2 completions to Ertz. We already talked about the Ertz connection. But what does that ultimately tell you there? That obviously Jaden Daniels, Zach Ertz are on the same page. Absolutely right. But on the first 11-on-11s, what were they doing a lot of? Running the football. They didn't throw it 5, 6, 7 times like my LeBron impression down in Miami Heat. They're running the football, and that's what they're fundamentally trying to get across. I said it on the last pod. The Patriots defense with Mike Vrabel, very tough, in the trenches type of guys. And so you have to be able to move bodies off the ball. And it seems like that was the emphasis for Washington today. Let's move bodies. Let's see how we can run the football. That's going to be the big test for this season. And helping to maintain that this offense is orchestrating at a high level. Because if you aren't going to have Terry, sorry, I have to apologize again for that. If you aren't going to have Terry, you got to be able to run the football well to take eyes off of Jaden Daniels. We want less eyes on Jaden Daniels, not more, right? That's why running the football is so important for this football team. We can't have Jaden Daniels being our leading rusher again this season. The young man, we all have our limits. And obviously Jaden Daniels continues to raise the limits for himself and the rest of us of what to expect out of a quarterback. Obviously we had a low bar coming into when he was drafted. That being said, though, he's continuing to showcase more and more. I don't want to stress that issue. I want to lower his workload so he could be more efficient when he is working. That's what I want to be able to do. That's what makes the entire team better. You'll be able to liquidate the clock easier, more. You'll be able to get the ball downfield. You don't have to rely on him so much, possibly opening up to injury. Which just goes in to say that Jaden Daniels was talking with, I think it was Saquon and Justin Jefferson. They did that little video, and they're talking about the Hail Mary and how awesome that was. And Jaden Daniels lets it slip that with a broke rib that he did that. And look, that was a big talking point last season. Just it goes to show how tough of a young man that is. And then also think back to what Marcus Mariota said to Jaden Daniels when he got hit second to last play in overtime against the Atlanta Falcons. Marcus Mariota picks him up and says, "Catch your breath. You'll be all right. Just use your God-given abilities to go win us this football game." A lot of young men need to hear that. That is something that, obviously, in today's culture, it's very much. Look, man, I broke my toe when I was in 7th grade and walked home, right? I saw a couple guys at practices around the NFL that hurt their foot, hurt their toe, and they got carted to the locker room. You know, like, they're very much so in today's society, it is very padded. It's very nurturing, right? It's sometimes you need to be able to pick somebody up and tell them they will be okay. You got to go do this. And I know that kind of sounds rash. It sounds brutal, I guess you could say, in a way, because you're trying to protect the young man in the long term, of course. But that kind of toughness is something that will stick with a man for a long time. And that sort of toughness from Jaden Daniels is something that will make him into an absolute freak animal. And that's what leading this football team, that's exactly what we need. And I'm sure Marshawn Lattimore absolutely loves it because he's of the elk, of course. But thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. Today, glad to see. It's unfortunate that we weren't able to see more of practice. It sucks. I did tune in to the Patriots YouTube channel for that. And like they only showed the pregame at people like talking, like Robert Kraft talking. But the craziest one was they started talking about Jaden Daniels and how old he was. Then one guy even in the panel made a joke that Jaden Daniels like has grandkids. It's like, oh my gosh, dude! Like you guys didn't have Tom Brady until he was 40 or like late 30s. Like, come on, dude! Like I'm pretty sure you guys are the last ones to be talking about how old a quarterback is. But that being said, it doesn't matter. He's still better. Drake May had multiple years of starting for North Carolina. He was very well versed in coming to the NFL. If you go down the Bill Parcells route, he had more than enough qualifications to be drafted by Bill Parcells. So yeah, you can miss me with that. Jaden Daniels just straight up better. You know what I mean? But besides that, guys, didn't hear much more out of training camp joint practice today. Very excited for Friday. Unfortunate that we're going to be without a couple guys that we were really looking forward to see what they could provide. There wasn't much of an update from Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, a.k.a. Lil Bill, which don't know how much to read into that. I know a lot of people on Twitter are complaining about our kind of media not reporting on what was happening at practice, and Lake Lewis kind of alluded to this, saying that he's going to have more in his episode later when he records, of course, but give him a break. All right, like, nobody's perfect, of course. I don't know what was going on up there. I have no idea, but it just speaks to how starving this fan base is for football content. We just want more of it. We can't have enough of it. And I'm right there with you guys. It's just there's no reason to go after them about that. Like, start questioning things like, what are you guys doing up there? You're taking pictures of Bon Jovi instead of the practice. I get it. I get what you're saying. This is what their job is. I get it. Just saying, give them a break. We'll be able to see Friday how everything goes. For the really good portion, be able to see with these young guys what they can do for us. But besides that, you're going to hear a lot of things. You're going to hear that offense was struggling. You're going to hear our defense got ran up and down the field, but we just talked about it earlier. We finished on a good note, and especially this offense where Josh Johnson is able to finish out entirely with the touchdown. Same with Jaden Daniels, able to finish his 11-on-11s with the touchdown. But he absolutely is still out there like a sharpshooter, scout sniper, out there just taking heads off in a very precise manner. And that's what our quarterback does, and that's what we want to continue to do. All right, everybody, we'll see you again on Sunday. I appreciate you all. If you made it this far, you're a frickin' champion. If I missed anything from joint practices today, please comment in the comment section on YouTube and let me know. If not, just let me know your thoughts on what you think of joint practices. And obviously, if you're as animated as I am about the Terry McLaurin situation, would love to hear your thoughts and what you think of the situation. Tell me how wrong I am. I don't mind. I don't mind doing that. All I know is that time is on my side, my friends. Now let's go to last to finish off. I want to answer this question from James Bonato, because James Bonato is a great fan of this show and submitted a question. He asks, with the exception of a few camps, every team gets excited in training camp about their wide receivers making incredible catches. Rookie linebackers look great. The quarterback is on fire and accurate. And each team thinks they have what it takes to win a championship. Then reality sets in when the season starts. How much is the buzz about how good the Commanders are looking in training camp warranted? It's a good question, because we do have to take into consideration that coming off of last season, there's going to be this excitement. It's going to be generated. But I think with the warrant part of it, James, what you can really feel comfortable in is how efficient this offense is. And on top of that, not only because of Jaden, but just how Cliff Kingsbury employs everybody, his offense, how he utilizes his offense. We talked about it before, James, about kind of using the run-pass option, the RPO, of using Eckler up the middle and then hitting Terry on the slant, the screen against Detroit. Just that's what your comfort level should be in, because this coaching staff has been fully retained, building on what last season was. That is what you should find comforting and warranting. Of course, everyone's going to get hyped up. I said on Twitter a couple weeks ago, James, this is the time for the hype of everyone, especially on Twitter, just hyping up random players and downplaying other guys. And then when things start to happen, you're like, oh, wait, maybe it didn't shape out that way. Regardless, this is the time that for us as a fan base to be very excited about the future. And that's why I am so adamant about Terry McLaurin being on the field practicing. I'm sorry. That it needs to happen. if you want success this season and to build on what you had. Because, look, Adam Peters, I'm sure he has a long way of confidence built with Josh Harris and company. I get it. You don't want the chink in the armor, though. You don't want that to start. You don't want that to build. Make sure that this is the best football team possible that you are deploying week one. So if I'm going to say anything, be confident in it is warranted with Washington, not only because of the coaching staff, not only because of Jaden Daniels operating as he is as a quarterback. His work ethic kind of has shown you that, James. But also the fact that they added some very good pieces in the draft. You don't have to take my word for it at all. All I know is they're adding the right pieces to places that we need it. We need it in the trenches. They added Josh Connerly. We needed some more long-arm DBs that are physical. We added Trey Amos. We're putting Mikey back to where his original place was, right? Bringing back Quan Martin. That is very important for this football team overall. And it's also very important that they added in free agency. And not only just a free agency, though, by the trades with Debo and Laramie Tunsil. That's confidence building. That's warranted, especially what Laramie Tunsil did today, kind of showcasing himself as a left tackle. That should be enough for you to knock your hat off. And so that's what I'll say is that's what is warranting for us to be excited about this season and know that we have a football team that is very capable of competing at a high level. And that's exactly what we need early on in the season. And that's why it's important for Jaden Daniels to be there. Now, last question we have. This one is from Tim Towner. Saw the headline, Disney's ESPN acquires NFL Network and Red Zone channel. How long is it going to be before we will have to pay to watch all football, pro or college? I'm not sure. I have a lot to say about that. I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I hated this move. And I know that it raises the salary cap for NFL teams and the NFL altogether by allowing them to get this. My whole thing is that company with the capital D, you guys have seen what they've done to Star Wars. You've seen what they've done to other things. Do not want them to get their infectious dead hands on something so beautiful as NFL Red Zone. Like, NFL Network, that's fine. Take it. You can make it a joke all you want. But I grew up watching NFL Network, and NFL Red Zone, when Washington isn't playing, is so clutch, dude. And Scott Hanson is fantastic at what he does. I hope they keep him along. And I hope they keep him on board for as long as they possibly can. But that being said, I'm petrified of what it could possibly be for the Red Zone in the future. Because maybe there won't be changes right away. It's easy to claim that, oh, you're just being crazy. Nothing's going to happen. They're not going to have talk shows get brought on. Like, okay, that's fine. You can say that. But in a year from now, we'll have a different discussion and see how this year went and see what changes they make. Because at this far, their resume in taking over things has been horrible. You shouldn't be excited about it. We have a great, fantastic thing. Don't want that to be ruined at all. Kind of like the Terry McLaurin in this football team, to be perfectly honest. I'm sorry, I keep talking about him, but it's my boy. All right, everybody, I know I already sent you off, but I hope you guys have a great, fantastic Wednesday and the rest of your week. We'll see you again on Sunday. We are looking to add a fourth member to the show, and keep an eye out for that. We could be doing a little bit of tryouts and things, but in discussions with multiple people that reached out and wanted to be involved. And if you want to join, if you have people in mind that you think would be great to add to our show as a fourth member, we are really trying to capitalize on our opportunities. We're trying to maximize what we can do in our capabilities. And I want to be able to do that with our fourth member. This isn't just something to do. I'm doing this to get better, not only for my mental sake, but also for our viewers. So that way you guys can get the full grasp of things. And we're really hoping to maximize the entertainment as much as possible. So if you have any insight, any tips, anything that you want to see more of from this channel, please let me know in the comment section, DM, whatever. I would love to hear from you and what you think, because any insight is great insight, and I would love to be able to hear from you. All right, everybody. We'll see you again on Sunday. I'm Kyle. Washington football. Woo! What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.